History is full of stories that were almost forgotten, events that shaped nations but were erased, suppressed, or overlooked. Welcome to Unveiling Hidden Past, where we bring those lost stories back to life. Today, we explore one of the most powerful revolutions in Southeast Asian history, a struggle for freedom that expelled an empire, only to fall under the rule of another. This is the story of the Philippine Revolution of 1896, the uprising that shook Spanish rule, ignited a nation, and set the Philippines on a path toward independence. How did a secret society spark a war that would change the fate of a country? Why did the revolutionaries' greatest victory turn into their greatest betrayal? Join us as we unveil the past and uncover the story that almost disappeared. For over 3 centuries, the Philippines was trapped under Spanish colonial rule. It was a time of oppression, forced labor, and rigid control under the Catholic Church. Any attempt at freedom was crushed, and Filipinos were treated as second-class citizens in their own land. But by the late 19th century, something was changing. New ideas of revolution were spreading. The people were growing restless, and in the shadows, a secret society was preparing for war. This is the story of the Philippine Revolution, the uprising that expelled Spanish rule. Spanish rule over the Philippines began in 1565 when explorer Miguel López de Legazpi arrived and declared the islands part of Spain. Over the next 3 centuries, the Spanish imposed a rigid colonial system, treating the natives as subjects to be ruled, taxed, and converted to Catholicism. Key aspects of Spanish rule were encomienda system. Filipinos were forced to work for Spanish landowners. Tribute and forced labor, heavy taxation and corvée labor for Spanish projects. Religious control. The Catholic Church became a major political force. No Filipino representation in government. The colony was ruled entirely by Spanish officials. Any attempt to resist Spanish rule was met with violence. Revolts were crushed, rebels were executed, and dissenters were silenced. But as time passed, more Filipinos became educated, and new ideas of liberty, nationalism, and revolution began to spread. By the 1880s, educated Filipinos, known as the Ilustrados, began advocating for reforms. They wanted Spain to treat the Philippines as an equal province with rights and representation. Leading this movement was José Rizal, a brilliant writer, doctor, and nationalist. José Rizal's contributions were 1. Noli Me Tangere and El Filibusterismo, novels exposing Spanish abuses. 2nd La Liga Filipina, a peaceful reform movement calling for Filipino rights. 3. Exile and Execution, 1896. Rizal was arrested and executed by the Spanish, but the Spanish government refused to listen. In 1892, Rizal was arrested and exiled. 2 years later, he was executed by firing squad, a moment that outraged Filipinos and ignited the flames of revolution. Rizal's execution was a turning point. Reform was no longer an option. The only way forward was revolution. In the shadows, Andrés Bonifacio, a self-educated worker, founded the Katipunan, a secret society dedicated to the complete independence of the Philippines through armed rebellion. Katipunan's key goals were: first, total independence from Spain; second, armed rebellion instead of reforms; and third, recruitment of revolutionaries from all social classes. In August 1896, the Spanish discovered the Katipunan's existence. Knowing they had little time before mass arrests, Bonifacio gathered his followers in the hills of Pugadlawin. In an act of defiance, they tore up their cedulars, the colonial identification papers that symbolized Spanish rule. This act became known as the Cry of Pugadlawin, and it marked the official start of the Philippine Revolution. The revolution spread rapidly. Battles erupted across the country, with revolutionaries ambushing Spanish garrisons and seizing towns. But one leader rose above the rest, Emilio Aguinaldo, a brilliant strategist from Cavite. Under his command, the revolution gained critical victories, forcing Spanish forces to retreat. The key battles of the Philippine Revolution: Battle of San Juan del Monte, the first major armed encounter; Siege of Manila, Filipino forces encircle the Spanish capital; Cavite Campaign, Emilio Aguinaldo's forces crush Spanish troops. By 1898, Spain was losing control. Then a new war broke out, the Spanish-American War. In May 1898, the United States defeated the Spanish fleet in Manila Bay. Suddenly, the revolution had an unexpected ally, or so they thought. On June 12, 1898, Aguinaldo declared Philippine independence, but the US had other plans. In the Treaty of Paris, 1898, Spain ceded the Philippines to the United States without consulting Filipinos. The revolutionaries had won, only to fall under a new colonial power. Though the Philippine Revolution of 1896 had forced Spain to surrender its rule, the struggle for true independence was far from over. The revolutionaries had expelled one colonial power, only to see their nation handed over to another. When Spain ceded the Philippines to the United States through the Treaty of Paris in 1898, the revolutionaries, who had fought and died for independence, were left with nothing. Emilio Aguinaldo, once a hero of the revolution, found himself fighting a new war, this time against the Americans in what would become the Philippine-American War, 1899 to 1902. For the next 5 decades, the Philippines remained under American rule. Roads were built, schools were established, and a new government was formed. But beneath these changes, the spirit of resistance never faded. Filipinos continued to fight for their right to self-govern, their right to be recognized as a free people. World War II would bring another occupier, the Japanese Empire, who invaded the Philippines in 1941. Once again, Filipinos took up arms, this time as partisans and guerrilla fighters, waging yet another war for their homeland. Finally, on July 4th, 1946, after centuries of struggle, the Philippines was officially granted full independence. The dream that had begun in the Katipunan secret meetings, in the jungles of Cavite, and on the battlefields of the revolution, was at last fulfilled. But history never truly ends. The scars of colonial rule, the betrayals, and the sacrifices of the past still shape the Philippines today. The revolution of 1896 was not just a fight against Spain. It was the birth of a national identity, a defining moment when Filipinos proved that they would never accept subjugation without a fight. More than a century later, the echoes of Bonifacio's Katipuneros, Rizal's final words, and Aguinaldo's declaration of independence still resonate in the heart of the nation. The revolution was only the beginning.